Okay, today we're going to do Daf Ches Amad Aleph. We're speaking about the Pesachim Daf Ches Amad Aleph. We're speaking about checking the chametz with a candlelight, as opposed to any other ways of checking chametz. So the Gemara says that all the way at the bottom of the Zion of the base, telling Abanim, we learn a brisa. We do not check the chametz. We don't check it by sunlight. We don't check it by moonlight. We don't check it by a flame light. That's the candlelight. It doesn't help if you bring a big flame of a torch flame to check. The chametz has to be from a simple small candle. Why? What's the reasoning in this? Because the light of a candle helps better to check the chametz. Even though we don't have a clear proof from Sukkim that the light of a candle is better, candlelight is better than any other type of light. Is brought down that there's a remembrance for this in the pasuk. What's the remembrance? It says in pasuk it says that you should not find chametz in your house for 7 days, and the Torah uses the lashon of yimatzi. Yimatzi means chametz should not be found. So we make a connection between the word yimatzi in our pasuk to a pasuk that says in Parshas Miketz Mayigash Vayichapis Bagadol Hechel. Says when Yosef put the cup in Binyamin's bag, he says they searched through the cups, and the search through the bag is Vayimatzi, and they found it. And so it uses the lashon of Vayichapis. In order to find something, you have to search for something. And searching, if you look in the Torah for the idea of searching, it says another pasuk, I'm going to search Yerushalayim with candles. Another pasuk says, Neir Hashem Nishmas Adam Chayfesh Kol Chavdei Batan. The Neir says the pasuk uses the terminology of Neir Hashem Nishmas Adam. The neshama is compared to the light of a candlelight, and the light of a candlelight Chayfesh Kol Chavdei Batan searches and penetrates all the chambers of the body, which means that the candlelight we see in Torah, even though it doesn't say specifically in Torah that when you search for something it should be with candlelight, we find different remembrances and references in the Pesachim that when you search it has to do with candlelight. Says the Gemara, we just learned before in the brisa that we what does it mean that we can't search chametz with sunlight? Which situation is this talking about? If you're talking about that we're speaking about a courtyard, and in a courtyard the brisa is telling us don't search a courtyard with candlelight, with sunlight. We can't say that because Rabbi said we don't have to search a courtyard. Why don't we have to search a courtyard for chametz? Because the ravens come. If you're going to leave chametz outside on a courtyard on Erev Pesach, the ravens are going to come and eat it. So since the ravens are going to come and eat it, so we rely on the ravens, and therefore you don't have to get rid of it. So which situation was the brisa talking about that we cannot search chametz by candlelight, by sunlight? Ella. So what are we talking about? We're speaking about a porch, which a porch has a roof. So the ravens are, or a balcony which the ravens aren't able to get in. The birds don't hang around there. So in that case, on one hand there's sunlight, on the other hand there's no ravens. So you're gonna have to get rid. The brisa is telling us don't check chametz on your porch with sunlight. That also we can't say, because Rava said that we are able to search chametz on a porch with sunlight. So this contradicts the brisa that says you can't search with sunlight. So we can't say that brisa is talking about a porch, because Rava specifically said when it comes to a porch, you are able to check it with sunlight as opposed to candlelight. The reason for this is there's different reasons brought down in the Rishonim why you have to search, why you're able to search with thing, but in a porch, the idea is in a porch, the sunlight is very strong, so therefore you search with sunlight. So what are we talking about? We're speaking about an indoor place. And an indoor place, we're speaking about a place that the roof has a hole inside. There's a skylight in the roof. So we're telling you that, see, even though the skylight in the roof, so we're thinking that you could check chametz through the beam of light that's coming down through the roof. That's what the brisa tells you, that even if there's a skylight coming down with sun, then you have to check with candles. Where's the skylight? If you tell them there's a skylight in the middle of the room and you're checking chametz directly under the skylight, meaning you are directly standing under this hole in the roof. So that we have the same thing as a porch. What's the difference if the porch you could check with the skylight as opposed to a hole in the room? If you're checking right under the hole in the roof, so that's the same thing as a porch. It's the same idea that you're standing right under skylight, direct skylight, and that's where you're checking your chametz. So I don't study. And so the maskana of the Brisa is the maskana of the Gemara is that the Brisa is talking about a case that you have an indoor house, and in the indoor house you have a hole in the roof, and the sunlight is coming down through this hole in the roof. But you're not checking chametz right under the skylight. You're checking chametz in the same room by the corners of the room where the skylight isn't there, directly there. That's what the Brisa tells you, that don't check chametz in the corners of a room, even if there's skylight. You have to use dafka candle. Okay. Which type of candle do you have to use? Which type of flame? So the difference between a candle, there's a difference between a candle and a flame from a few wicks together. What's the difference? Says the Gemara v'avuka. No, you can't check chametz with a few wicks together, a few flames together, a big flame. How can you say that? Rabbi said, my dechsiv, it says in pasuk v'neiga ka'oti, it says when Mashiach comes, that the light of, it says the Eibishter created the light on the first day, and then the Eibishter hid the light from Mashiach will come. The pasuk says, the pasuk in Habakkuk, it says that the rays of the light, it says that the Eibishter is going to give this light to tzaddikim. It's going to shine this light for the tzaddikim, and it's going to reflect off the tzaddikim. The tzaddikim's faces are going to shine. It's going to be so light. And the pasuk continues and says that from in the Eibishter's light that he's going to give to tzaddikim, this is the reward for tzaddikim. And then the Rabbi continues saying, Lama tzaddikim demim b'pnei hashchina. Why are tzaddikim similar to the Shechina? Because they're like candles. Kanei, they're like a candles. How are tzaddikim similar to the Shechina? Kanei b'pnei ha'avuka, like a candle light in front of a big flame. From here we see that candlelight, that even though tzaddikim are demim leberam, but obviously they're not demim to the Shechina. They're only demim to the Shechina, like a candlelight. They're both light, but one's a candlelight. Tzaddikim are a candlelight, and the Shechina is a avuka, is a flame. Rabbi said another proof. Avuka lahavdil mitzvah mufcha. If you're going to use for avdalah, it's better to use a flame as opposed to a candlelight, because a flame is, the light's much stronger, and that's what we actually use nowadays. We stick two candles together, because avuka, a flame is only when you have two candles together, as opposed to one wick, which is a candlelight. So Rabbi says it's better to use a candlelight as opposed to one flame. So from here we see that the light of a candle, the light of a flame is much, much stronger than the light of a candle. So why would you have to only use a candlelight? So there's a few answers to this. The first answer is like this. Amar of Nachum Yitzchak, Nachum Yitzchak said, to check chametz, you have to check chametz in chayrin and uzdakin. Chayrin and uzdakin are the holes in the walls and the cracks in the walls. You can't bring a flame near to or into the cracks in the walls. So in order to check chametz thoroughly, even though the area of the light is the area of a flame is more powerful, but to check chametz more thoroughly, it's better to use a candle, because that's where you're able to get into the small scratches and small holes in the wall to check for chametz. That's one answer. Another answer is Rav Zvid Amar, a candlelight, the light is much stronger in front of you. The candlelight doesn't travel backwards, because the candle, since it's a small light, so it helps you see in front of you. When it's speaking about a flame, be'ikr isn't made to see right in front of you. A flame is there that the light should express itself around the whole room. And now that since the flame in front of you is a big flame, sometimes it's so strong that it's hard to see. You can't see properly. The ikr, the main purpose for a flame is not to light right in front of you now. It's more for a general spectrum of light. So that's why when it comes to checking chametz, to say, which you have to go into specific places, you want to see in front of you, so you choose a candlelight. Another answer is of Papa Aman, high boys, high low boys. When it comes to a candlelight, the candlelight is very small flame. So therefore, you're not scared it's going to burn your house down. When it comes to a flame is a big flame, and therefore you're going to be so worried about if the house is going to burn down because of your dikas chametz. So you're not going to have it's going to distract your attention away from checking chametz thoroughly. So therefore, you choose a candlelight. One more answer is high mashach neira, high mitkaf iktufi. When it comes to a candlelight, the candlelight has the same pace of light, and the light doesn't flicker so much, and it doesn't go. The light temperature stays the same. When it comes to a flame, a big flame, since it's a big flame, so sometimes it gets smaller and sometimes it gets bigger. So it could be that when you're checking your chametz, the flame is going to go down in volume, and therefore you should use a candlelight, which is more steady. Okay, so that was why you have to use a candlelight. Now we're going to speak about the places you have to check chametz. Said in the Mishnah, continuing a quote from the Mishnah said, the Mishnah said, any place that doesn't need, that you don't bring in chametz, you do not need to check chametz. Says the Gemara, why does the Mishnah say the lashon of kol makim? Kol makim means all the places. The Mishnah should just say makim she'em machnisim chametz, a place that you don't bring chametz. Well, the extra word kol is coming to include something. So the Gemara says, "Kol makim lasuimai." What is the word the call coming to teach us? So the Gemara says the word calls to teach us lasuyu hadatan rabban is to include what it says. We learn in a brayso. We learn in a brayso like this: Chayre bayis halyonim atachtonim. The holes in the house. In those days, the walls weren't plastered walls. The walls were like more stone walls, or even plaster walls weren't real plaster. So they used to have a lot of holes, which used to use as storage places in the wall. So the brayso says, if you have holes in the wall which are all the way at the top of the ceiling, or all the way at the bottom, so too v'gaga yitzia. So too if you have a small attic or small storage room that you use as a storage place, v'gag hamigdo, or the top of the closets, and so too v'refes bakar, a barn, v'lulin, or a chicken coop, umasvein, or a storage place of straw, or storage places of wine and storage places of oil, do not need to be checked for chametz, because all these places are places that even if you do bring chametz, the stam of the animals ate them up. And this is what the Mishnah is telling us, that these places, even if you do bring chametz, you are pater from checking for the chametz. Shimon ben Gamliel says, if you have a bed that's inside, it's dividing the rooms. You have two bedrooms. You have one big room. You want to make it into two bedrooms. In those days, the beds were very big. So you put a bed in between. And the bed basically divides between one side of the room and the other, and it makes it into two bedrooms. And you don't usually go from one bed, and since the legs are very tall, so under the bed, there's a hefsek. It's not a box. It's a bed on four legs, more like a bunk bed type of style, without the bed at the bottom, and there's room under the bed to put things. So since maybe you're going to store stuff under the bed, you have to check chametz. Says the Gemara, I'm going to bring another brayso from this brayso we just learned. When it comes to oil, storage places of oil and wine, you have to check chametz. When it comes to beds, you have to check chametz. When we learn another brayso that says completely opposite. It says if you have a hole in the wall which goes straight through one house to the other. So what's the din? Each person has to stick his hand through the hole and check as far as his hand is able to reach. And the other side of the wall also has to check however long his hand could reach. And the place in the middle, meaning their hands weren't able to, the wall is too thick for them to, their hand space to reach all the way through. So you're not mechuyev to stick things down the wall and check all the way. You just have to check until where your hand is able to reach. And the rest of the chametz, you don't have to check, you just have to mevatel. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel adds, if you have a bed that's dividing, is a mechitz, like a wall between two sides of the house. And under the bed you're storing wood or stones. And there's a hefsek from the floor to the bed, and it's more like a bunk bed. It's not something that goes all the way, reaches all the way to the floor. He doesn't have to check. So from here we see kasha mita. You have a contradiction from the case of the bed to the case of the bed in previous brayso. Because in the previous brayso we said that Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said you do have to check the bed, and in this brayso we say completely opposite. You don't have to check the bed. And kasha we have a contradiction between the holes in the walls. Also, because in the previous brayso we said that the holes in the walls you don't have to check, and in this brayso we're saying that the holes in the walls you do have to check until your hand's able to reach. So there's a contradiction from the whole brayso beginning to the end. The contradiction of the walls isn't a contradiction because previous brayso that said you don't have to check the holes in the walls. We're speaking about the holes in the walls that are at the top of the house and at the top of the wall, the top of the ceiling, and the bottom of the ceiling. So these places are very hard to reach. So you probably don't store things there so much. But when it comes to if you have a hole in the middle of the wall, so comes the second brayso and tells you that the holes in the middle of the wall you do have to check. because that's where it's more accessible. Therefore you store stuff there. And mita kasha, the contradiction of the beds, both cases. That one brisa said that by a bed you don't have to check chametz. The second brisa said by a bed you do have to check chametz. Just different types of bed. Ha the mita aliyah and ha the mita toy. First brisa that says you don't have to check by a bed. Speaking about that the legs are very tall. Since the legs are it's a very tall bed, so it's very easy accessible storage over there. So you must stuck stuff over there. But the second rice that says by a bed you don't have to check chametz. The second rice is speaking about a bed that has very low legs. Since the bed has very low legs, the storage space isn't accessible so much, and therefore you don't have to check chametz there. Okay, so we answered that still. Says the Gemara, we just learned in the previous brisa that storage places of wine don't need to be checked for chametz. But we learned in the brisa, we learned that when it comes to storage places of wine, you do have to check chametz. And shemen in tzich, when it comes to oil, you don't have to check chametz. So one brisa says when it comes to wine, the storage place of wine, you do have to check chametz. And another brisa says the storage place of wine, you don't have to check chametz. So we're speaking about with the brisa that says that you have to check chametz in a storage space of wine. Speaking about a storage space of wine that usually take during the meal also, meaning it's a local storage, it's not like a deep storage, and since it's a local storage, so you usually use it also during the meal. So we're scared that the shamish or you took a sandwich while you were biting onto your sandwich, you went to get some wine, and you bought some chametz into the wine storage. Therefore, you have to check the storage space of wine. If so, if we're speaking about the storage space that's accessible, then when it comes to oil, why do we say that a storage space of oil is part from checking chametz? Oil also, maybe you have to get some oil during the meal, and you brought some chametz into the oil storage. It says the Gemara, there's a fundamental difference between oil and wine. When a person drinks wine, he doesn't drink in a specific amount. I mean, he doesn't come for the meal and he brings one bottle of wine and then that's it. If he finishes it, that's it. No, wine is something that if you drink more, you can drink. There's no limit to how much someone could drink wine. So it's very possible that even though he brought a bottle of wine up already, he's going to want more. So shemen, mashenk, when it comes to oil is something which you don't usually need so much during the meal. So when you took a certain amount, when it comes to oil, you take a certain amount of the storage. And that's it. You don't go back during the meal. So shemen, yesh kevalachin, when it comes to oil, there's a certain amount how much you eat. And once it's finished, it's finished. You're not going to go get more. You know how much to take. Yain ain't kevalashtir. When it comes to wine, there's no certain amount of how much someone could drink. If someone's by for ring and it always runs out of mashka, someone brings more mashka. There's no certain amount of how much wine someone could drink, and therefore we're always scared that maybe during the meal you went to get some wine from your storage house and you brought some chametz there. Tanya Rabbi, bring a brisa regarding this Indian. Tanya Rabbi says in a brisa, also says sheikha b'bavel says yain be'eretz Yisrael mistapik. Yeah, in Bavel they switched a bit from drinking wine to drinking beer or other liquids. So Chachamim in Bavel made that the storage places of beer should have the same inim of wine, that you have to check your beer storage for wine because your beer storage for chametz, because maybe you drank beer during the meal and you wanted some more and you went to get some. I assume, I didn't check this up, but the same apply nowadays. Someone has a storage place of Coke or other beverages, coffee or things like that you drink during the meal, then it could be you have to check chametz because it's very likely that he doesn't bring a certain amount from his storage place. He does bring a certain amount, but he doesn't estimate that this is going to be it and he's not going to bring any more. So therefore, he would have to check his house, check the storage house for chametz because it could be during the meal he went there and brought some chametz into there. I would see different storage houses that need to be checked for chametz. Amar Rav Chisda said, "Bei dogim." If you have a storage place of fish, you do not have to check the storage house for fish for chametz. Says the Gemara about time we learn in brisa. We learn in brisa that a storage house of fish needs to be checked for chametz. Says the Gemara, like kasha, it's not a contradiction. But Rabbi, one speaking about a storage house of big fish. And if we're speaking about a storage house of big fish, the shamish knows, the bartender knows how much fish to bring up. And therefore, when he brought the fish, there's no chash that he went back to bring more fish. And Harbors do today, the price that says you have to check the storage house of fish for chametz, speaking about a storage house that has very small fish over there. And very small fish, they run out very quickly. So mistama, they ran out during the meal, and you have to bring some more. And therefore, he maybe bought some chametz, therefore you have to check. Amar Rabbi bar Rav Huna said, Bei milchi or bei kiri, if you have a storage house of salt or a storage house of wax for candles, so you have to check the storage house for chametz, because again, salt is something that runs out quickly during the meal, and so too wax is the candles burn out, and therefore maybe you have to get some more candles, and therefore you have to check them because we're scared that maybe the shamash went inside the storage house with chametz and brought chametz there. Amar Rafapa said, Beitzivi or Beitamli, if you have a storage house of wood or a storage house of figs or dates, then tzrich bdika, you have to check. And again, these things are things that people mash on. It's not something which has a kavod amount. Wood, the fire runs out quickly, and when it comes to figs and different fruits, it runs out. People eat them very quickly, and therefore we're scared that they ran out, and the shamash had to get food, extra supplies during the meal, and maybe he brought his sandwich there, and therefore he brought chametz into there. Now we're going to speak about a brayso regarding checking chametz. We learn in a brayso ein mechayvin eisei lahachnis yada lecheinu v'lizdakin livdak ne'asakon. When someone is checking chametz, Chacham weren't mechayvin to put his hands into very small cracks in a wall, because if it could be dangerous. Ma'asakana, which danger can there be of sticking your hands down a crack in the wall? If you're going to tell me that we're speaking about that there's a sakana that you're going to find a scorpion, you're going to put your hand inside the wall and you can find a scorpion, then it could bite you and it's dangerous. You can't say that, because if there's a chashash, there's a scorpion on the wall, how did you use the wall lechatchila? How did you store stuff in there lechatchila? If they're scared of scorpions, then you don't stick stuff down the wall. Yeah, in my house we had a cupboard that had that we once found a mouse in there, whatever it was, and we didn't use that cupboard for years. A cupboard that has rodents in there, especially if it's dangerous, you're not going to use. So how did you use it? So let's see how the nafa. We're not speaking about a storage house that you use lechatchila. There were no scorpions there. Then, for whatever reason, the structure fell down. It broke. And now it's a heap of stones. Once it becomes a heap of stones, the scorpions show up. And now it became dangerous right now. But you know for a fact there's chametz in there. Says if the structure fell down, why do I have to check chametz there? But now we learned in the Mishnah, we're going to learn it soon. If there's chametz, that a heap of stones fell on it, which is now inaccessible, it's as if it's burnt already, and then you don't have to check chametz. So this storage house, even though you know there's chametz over there, but now that it's a heap of stones, there's no chiv to check chametz anymore. Says Hasam over there. When do we say that if a heap of stones falls down on chametz, it doesn't have to be checked? Is only if it's inaccessible, even for a dog. When a dog comes, it's too hard for the dog to reach. And therefore, we say that even if a dog can't reach it, so for sure you can't reach it. But over here, speaking about a heap of stones, it's not such a big heap, and therefore if a dog's going to come and sniff it out, he's going to come and take it out. So therefore, there's still a chiv of dika, and that's what we're saying, that over here, since there's a scorpion over there, maybe, so therefore, because of the sakana, you don't have to check. Says the Gemara, is a famous question. Rabbi said, "Shluchim mitzvah einin nizokin." We check chametz is a mitzvah rabbanon, and we have a rule: shluchim mitzvah einin nizokin. If someone does doing a mitzvah, while he's doing the mitzvah, at least, then there's a cloud that the Eibusha is going to watch over him. It's a shliach mitzvah, and he's not going to be in trouble. Nothing's going to happen to him. So even though he knows there's the scorpions over there, let him go check chametz. He's doing a mitzvah. So the Gemara says no. Amar Rav Ashi was scared. Maybe in this storage house he had a needle. He had something precious that he wanted to take out from there anyway. And he says, so he's saying, if I'm anyway checking the storage house for chametz, and I have full protection of the Eibusha because I'm doing a mitzvah, maybe I'll find my needle also. And the second he's going to find his needle, the protection that he has goes away. And the scorpion's going to come and bite it. So therefore, Chacham said, don't check this type of structure, because we're scared that you're going to get carried away for doing the mitzvah, and then the protection is going to go away. Once the protection goes away, it's a sakana. Says the Gemara over Chahai Gamna Lav mitzvah, and you're telling me that if he's checking his house also for the needle, it's not a mitzvah? Meaning, if someone's doing a mitzvah for and while he's doing a mitzvah, he's doing other purposes also, it's not a mitzvah. Well, Tanya, we learn in the Brayso, someone gives tzedakah, and he says, tzedakah, someone who gives a amount a coin to tzedakah. It says, this coin, I'm giving it specifically that my son should get better in the course of this mitzvah. He says, I'm giving this mitzvah, I'm doing this mitzvah, so that should be a ben elam haba. So we see over here, even though someone's doing a mitzvah, but he's not doing a mitzvah for the right purpose. He's doing a mitzvah for his own purpose. So it might be like in the case over here, he's checking chametz. While he's checking chametz, he's also checking for his needle. He's mixing in other personal interest into the mitzvah. But it says on the back side, it's tzaddik gomer. It's tzaddik gomer. This is a lot of burim was said on this. On this line. See this, and Nigla Taisus is all passionate. So over here, while he's checking for his needle, what's the problem? He's still outside the garment. He's still doing the mitzvah. It doesn't matter. Says the Gemara, no. The badak also learning about. We're not speaking about he's checking for his chametz, and he's also checking for his needle. We're speaking about he might check for his chametz. After he's finished checking for his chametz, he is going to check for the needle after he finishes the mitzvah. So over here, the action of checking chametz and the action of checking for the needle are two separate actions. Since the two separate actions, we're scared the scorpion is going to come while he's checking for his needle, and therefore he's going to be in sakana. We're going to stop over here, Daf Ches Amud Beis, and we're going to continue tomorrow further on Daf Ches Amud Beis. Have a good night.